Hello, welcome to the Elevate Dataviz Show, episode 8. We're here to explore current topics in data visualization, share our creative inspiration, and the tools and techniques that we are experimenting with as practicing information designers. Today, we're going to talk about what we want to do more of and less of personally in 2023, and what we'd like to see more of and less of in just generally in the dataviz field. I'm Allie Torben. We have Duncan Gear.
Hello.
Gabrielle Marit. And Will Chase.
Hello.
And before we jump in, this show is supported by members of the Elevate Dataviz learning community who get the opportunity to watch and ask questions live. If you would like to do that and you want to level up your dataviz skills in a supportive community, check out elevatedataviz.com. Okay, so first lightning roundtable.
Are we mixing metaphors here a little bit? A lightning roundtable sounds pretty terrifying, to be honest.
I'm coining that as a new term going into 2023. A lightning roundtable, like yes.
More of that in 2023.
So personally, what we would like to do more of and less of. So actually, maybe it'd be more fun. It'd be more lightning-y if we each did the more of, and then we all went around and did the less of. What do you think?
Well, you're destroying the joke that I was about to make that I just want to do less work and make more money. But other than that,
now I ruined
Isn't that what
it.
we all want, though? I feel like that's too easy, Duncan.
Session
Too
closed.
Universal.
But no, more seriously, I'm very happy with that arrangement. That sounds good.
Okay. All right. So more of. Duncan, would you like to go first with more of?
Yeah, I have, as some of you watching this will know, spent quite a lot of time this year making tools to do sonification with. And that's been really, really fun. I have made a script for the Norns music computer that does it, which plugs it into a kind of like modular system. And then I also made a tool for the VCV rack, virtual modular synthesizer, which lets you load in a CSV file and turn it into sound and music in whatever way you want to. What I haven't done is made so many sonifications because I've been like making a lot of tools. So next year, I very much want to actually use some of the tools that I've made and make some sonifications with them and try and get more of a sort of like rolling thing going where I make them on a regular basis. So that is my 2023 more. Was that lightning enough, or was that a bit?
No, that was good. I guess we
yeah.
don't really have time since it's such lightning-y. We don't have time to comment on it, but
I mean, we're 3 minutes in, and this is supposed to be an hour.
Not when it's a lightning, Gabby.
We've got time. Like, that's all we have here.
I'm very excited about your sonification stuff, Duncan. That's what I want to say.
Can I add that it's also normal that like when you spend time doing tools, it takes a long time and then only you get to have fun. So I think it's interesting that you raised that up, that like you had to focus on that first.
Yeah. I mean, the tools that I wanted didn't exist, so I had to make them. What I am highly anticipating happening, despite what I want, is that in the process of making things, I will discover lots of changes that I need to make to the tools and then spend 2023 making those changes to the tools. And then maybe I'll actually make some sonifications properly in 2024. We'll see.
Yeah, I don't know. I find this, I have really enjoyed, like I get Duncan's newsletter, as you all should, of course. Duncan writes a 10-day newsletter, whatever you call it.
Yeah.
It's
every 10
wonderful.
days, basically.
Yes. It's wonderful. Everyone should subscribe. And I don't know. I've really, really loved watching the progress on the sonification thing because it feels so impressive, like what you've built. Because it feels very much like there was, I mean, sonification was a thing, but, you know, it was very, very early days. And it's all these kind of little individual researchers like doing their own thing and kind of, you know, custom building everything. And when we look at things like, you know, most other fields, there's sort of this base of like tools and processes and information that people have built so that when someone new comes into the field, they can jump into it and just like start making stuff and get involved. And I don't think that really existed for sonification in large part. I mean, there was lots of things, but they were there was a lack of accessibility to those tools, I think.
Yeah, ironically, given how everyone talks about sonification in the context of accessibility.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think you're right. There was scattered information. Definitely some of it was 10, 15 years old. And, you know, I've found, the other day I found a piece of vintage sonification software from 2005, and it was like, it looked amazing. It looked absolutely incredible. But it was definitely not kind of like usable still today. And I think that's quite interesting. So,
so it feels really, I don't know. I feel like it's really interesting to watch you kind of like build this from very little and turn it into like such a service to the community, because I don't know, I've used so much open source software. You know, if you go into, I mean, now it's become this whole business and it's like very much taken for granted. But if you go into R, and you're like, oh my God, everything, you know, this ggplot, it's so useful and it's so easy to use. And there's all this documentation. And then you realize that like 90% of it was written by one guy, and Hadley Wickham just like owns, you know, the R universe, and everyone, like half these people like owe their careers to the tools that Hadley Wickham has built. And so I feel like you are very much doing that. Like, it's early days, but like Duncan is doing that for sonification.
Yeah, we are predicting the row graph of sonification by Duncan Gear, and I hope you make a lot of money out of it eventually.
I can see like 10 years down the road, you know, some little like new sonification person coming out of school, and they're like, oh my God, you're Duncan Gear. You've built like all these things that I've made, and like you like built this community, and
you supported my career. You created my career.
Yeah, exactly.
You are all very, very kind.
Somebody who has a similar path is Carl Webster. Carl T. Webster. He was making he's an illustrator, and he was making a lot of Photoshop brushes for his own practice, like hundreds of them. He made so much that like people were starting to use like regularly, and he was trying to sell them like individually, but it was really hard. Anyhow, it was so famous, people were like paying individual that Adobe bought them, right? They not only bought the brushes to like redistribute for free through Adobe, but they also hired him to make more. Like, he's a full-time employee making brushes for Adobe. So it's interesting how like this idea of like, I'm making a tool for myself just because I need it, and I make it open source, so like really low pay, whatever, can lead to something else. So who knows? Maybe Duncan, you're gonna be Carl Webster.
Who would acquire you?
Yeah, I mean, that's the big question, isn't it? I wonder if Hadley Wickham spent 10 years going, I really want to make more data visualizations and stop making tools.
Yeah, I don't know. He's talked about that before. I interviewed him one time before. I should have asked him that.
See, this is why I said this needs to be lightning. We can't comment on it because now we're 10 minutes in.
We better move over to someone else then quickly.
Okay.
All right, I can try to be lightning.
Okay.
So more of, what do I want to do more of? So I will say like two different like areas. So in the professional world, I want to do, both of them are like, basically I want to do more things for myself. That is my goal. So on the professional side of things, I would like to just do more, like double down on my work. So like for a lot of years, I've been kind of, you know, scattered, and I've had these like full-time job, but then I'm like working freelance and like doing these personal projects and like doing all this stuff. And I think this year I really want to, like, I have a really great team at Axios that we've built, and
you were promoted.
I was promoted. Like, so I lead this team that, you know, I feel very, I don't know, we've like grown so quickly, and I feel like we are poised to do very great things. And so I want to just like double, triple down on all of that, and like go very much focus my work on like my professional life, and like see what we can produce as a team at Axios, and try to like, you know, concentrate most of my efforts there rather than being as scattered all over the place. And then this is probably like sort of doing less, but maybe it's doing more. I want to do more like personal non-work things for myself. So because I've been scattered and doing so many different things, and oftentimes like learning things, like teaching myself new skills, or very much trying to like change careers, which takes a lot of work in your free time to do that. I have basically neglected like all of my non-work related hobbies and personal time for the last like 5 years. And so I would like to not do that. I would like to do more like spending time with my husband and going outside and taking trips and camping and cooking and fixing up my house and woodworking and like all these things that I would like to do that have nothing to do with computers or data viz, or, well, they kind of have to do with design, but that's inevitable. So
That's nice. It's a good reminder to do those things.
Yes, exactly.
Refocus.
So, yep.
What about you, Gabby?
I'm probably into real space too, where at the personal level, I would like to do something else that's not work. I don't have a life and I'm workaholic and everything is work. So I would also like to personally not do that. I want to.
Do you schedule it, either of you? Like, do you schedule non-work time?
I schedule it and then work takes over. I literally have like date night in my calendar with my husband, and I'm like, oh, I can't. I have this time. Like, just how bad I am.
Yeah, I don't schedule it so much, but I do. I try to be, and I think like I have been in the past. Like I'm pretty, at least when it comes to like my work, I'm fairly good about setting boundaries. I'm like, okay, it's 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. or whatever. So like I'm done. I'm turning off the computer. I'm not checking Slack. So I just kind of try to set boundaries like that. But I think the problem is more like all these other extraneous obligations that, then take over once the work time is done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, Gabby, I interrupted you when
No. I think that's a great question. So working on that, working on work-life balance, I think is difficult. And over personal stuff, I'm working on being more grateful. I'm terrible at appreciating life as it is, and I think it's really cheesy and really hippie. But I think I have a hard time doing that. I have a hard time being like, I'm in a space where I can afford living, which it hasn't always been like the case. Like I can afford things, I'm like just in a beta space, and like I always felt unsatisfied. I'm like, I want more money, I want more project, I want more fame, I want more of everything. And I think I want to pull that back a bit and just practice gratitude, which is just, not my thing.
I will join you in that, because I am also very, very bad at appreciating the things that I have. So, yeah.
Your more of is to want less of more.
Yes. Maybe I'll make that less. Maybe I'll make that my less thing.
Yeah.
We need t-shirts. Less of more.
Yeah. We're just doing the more. We're doing the more, right? Yeah.
Just more now.
Yeah. Professionally, I'm looking just for like, I'm not sure yet. I want to do more exploration of new things that haven't been done before. And I'm really obsessed with Dataviz design system. So I'd love to do more of that, specifically, like it's a detail. And in general, like collaboration with people excite me a lot. So I'm just looking forward to like just meeting people outside of Dataviz and have those collaborations, because I always learn a lot from that. So I'd love to have more of that next year, I guess.
That's great. Let's see. My more of is very similar in that I want to do more of my outside hobbies, like make time for that. Like over Thanksgiving, I had extra time. So I was sewing, and I sewed these little vests for my nephews and for my daughters. And then I did one for me. It was so fun to just, do something off the computer.
Yeah, I want to show. I want to see now.
Yeah. There it is. I set it up. I gave it
Wow,
a special
right
spot
there
on my desk.
Yeah.
But another more of is that I want to do more of my newsletter, because, with all the social media craziness of Twitter, and it's just like, I love social media and I'm not getting rid of it, but I just noticed the amazingness that comes out of my newsletter, which I'm sure Duncan already. It's just, you can send out, some ideas, and then it's like a one-to-many relationship. Like I can start a conversation with 1,000 people and then get people responding back to me. And it just feels so much more personal than just like blasting out to social media.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes I feel like I'm blasting out to my email newsletter list. But what I like about it is that quite often people don't actually reply to the message itself, but they will like send me a DM or like a WhatsApp message or something else, maybe like a few days later. I mean, maybe that's when they're reading it. But yeah, it is kind of like you put it out, and then over a period of days, you kind of get responses and people thinking
Yeah.
about it and stuff
Private
like that. It's not the
process.
kind of like, 2 minutes after you've posted your tweet, it has disappeared forever into the river of tweets and no one is ever going to see it again, kind of thing.
Yeah. 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 So that's my more of. All right, Duncan, less of.
I think next year I want to do less new things.
Okay.
And this is kind of so this is kind of off the back of this idea of a depth year. I don't know if people watching this are familiar with this concept, but it is this idea that you pick a year and you say, this is going to be my depth year. And you don't buy new books. You don't pick up new hobbies. You don't buy courses. You don't do any of that. You just clean up the stuff that you've bought already and haven't done anything with, you go
for a whole
deeper,
year. Oh
not
gosh, that's
broader.
kind of terrifying.
Yeah, I mean, that's the idea.
I love that
you
it
don't
sounds
buy
like
new
the
equipment,
death year, like death.
Oh, DEATH,
No new books.
Death year. Depth year. No, because you go deeper into the things that you're already into, and you further your skills. I kind of have, and I think probably a lot of creative people have this, where they kind of like go 90, like they learn like 90% of what they, of being really good at something. They get to that kind of like 90% point, and then it gets really hard, and they're better than 90% of the rest of the population, and so they just stop. And I do this all the time, but what I want to do is kind of, I don't know, try and get less broad and like master a few things instead. That's something I think I'm going to try and do a bit more of this year.
What are you going to focus on then, if you were to pick some things?
So I want to improve my design skills more, like visual design. But primarily, I want to do a lot of like, this is not necessarily like information design stuff that is connected to sonification. I've been studying a lot of music theory this year to try and improve my skills in that. And I'm very much like, I don't know how grades in piano work, but I feel like I'm barely at like first grade or whatever. I'm still having trouble with chords. Like, how do you tell an augmented and a diminished chord apart by ear? I don't understand how anybody does that. But yeah, so I want to kind of like apply that a bit and just go deeper, be able to tell them augmented and diminished chords apart, and also decide like when I would want to use those things and kind of, explore that a bit more. And there are definitely, as I say, applications with sonification there. But yeah, that's one thing that I definitely want to do. And just read a lot of the books that are sitting in my bookcase unread. That's a big thing for me.
Yeah, I do have a lot that I should probably read and stop buying them. Let's see. Will, how about you? We're on less of.
Well, let's see. A lot of my more of sort of had an inverse that was less of. So I think those go without saying. Much like Duncan, I would also like to do less new things and focus on a few things and make those really good.
I got really lucky going first in both of these things because I could say the thing.
We all probably have
similar
answers. But I would like to do, I think, this is again sort of a little bit personal, a little bit professional. I would just like to do a lot less worrying about things. I am a textbook worrier. I have a lot of anxiety about everything, basically. And I don't need to. It doesn't help anything. It just, makes my life worse, and everything always turns out fine anyways. So that is probably mostly a personal goal, but it always relates to the professional life as well. Less worrying.
Do you have any kind of particular strategies you want to use to accomplish that?
No,
or is it kind of tied to that gratitude thing that we were talking about?
I wish I did. I think some of it is the gratitude, right? Some of it is that, like, realizing what I have. I think, it's something I've been working on for years. So it's not like, this is not necessarily a new goal, but so there's techniques of thinking about like, okay, what am I so worried about? What is the worst thing that could happen? And then like, would it really be that bad? Like, so great, that happened. Then like, what are you going to do to deal with it?
There's
that's something.
a tool that might be helpful for you for that and for others. I just watched the video. It was in my feed in LinkedIn. It was from Tim Ferriss, which I'm also a big fan of. And the TED is called "Why You Should Define Your Fears Instead of Your Goal." And as another big warrior, I'd also have this problem. And he had this whole thing of like, define the fear, say, you know, what you could do to solve the fear, and then what you could do to, I think it's like handle it afterwards. Like if it happens, you know, how do you emotionally? Anyway, it's a tool on how to handle this. And I just thought that was really interesting, and I might even, implement. So it's an idea that maybe Tim Ferriss, why you should define your fears instead of your goals.
I like that. I will definitely read that. And I think a related goal to that, which is like sort of involved, probably tied into that, but somewhat different, is less controlling. So I am, well known for being a control freak, again, in the professional life and the personal life. And I, for many reasons, need to be less of that. So, more compromising, letting people be their own person instead of trying to control everything, more independence, more delegating. So all of those are things that I am working on.
I could probably use a bit of that source as well, to be honest.
I think all of us, if you're trying to achieve things, like your brain just gets into this, must be done this way.
Yeah, exactly.
It's almost like you are forced into this when you freelance a little bit, because you do have to control every single parameter of your project, because otherwise it's just you, like your money, your time, your everything, the worrying. So I feel like it's almost like most of us who end up freelancers are like that originally, and then it's like push 200,000 like extra because and then there's a point in your life, at least we all have been there, where we're like, okay, we need to pull that back and like hire people, trust them, and let it go.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, I think it is partially that freelance or just like working on your own for so long, I mean, I obviously work with other people, but like in different fields. And so this was, being self-taught and then learning on your own. And then, I've always been relatively opinionated and also confident. And so I think those two things are just a recipe for disaster when it comes to like letting go, all those things that Gabby said that we need to do. So yeah, letting go. That's a good goal.
That's good. How about you, Gabby?
I don't know.
All the above.
When we agreed on the subject, I was like, yeah, less is really hard. Less is difficult. Overall, just like everybody else, I want to do a little less, focus on more things and less worrying and all that. The reality is that it's really difficult at that stage to know and also it's difficult to give up on things. I guess I like Duncan is like, I'm going to do that for a year, but it feels like giving up. Like it's really hard to be like, I'm going to give up more money, or I'm going to give up those specific project that I love. I'm going to give up my personal art because it makes time for personal other stuff that are not, design related. So it feels like giving up something, and it's really difficult.
Yeah. Like you're stopped moving forward now because you're not doing something new, absorbing something.
I read a really good interview with Cory Doctorow the other day, who's a writer and an activist. And he was talking about how he has been forced into this situation where I think there are like 3 core things that he does. And one of them is like being a novelist. One of them is, I think, running his blog. And then the third one is like achieving like activism and campaigning and stuff like that. And he says he's now at this point where he can't say yes to something unless it meets at least 2 of those goals. Like it can't just be like making him a better novelist. It has to make him a better novelist and campaigner, or better novelist and blogger, or something like that, just because he doesn't have time in his life for other things. And that feels like a really difficult place to get into.
Yeah, it does make it. That seems like a great way to prioritize things. Like you prioritize 3 things. These are the 3 things that I want to be, have my main focus, and then use that as your guiding principle. And I'm saying, yes, it has to kind of hit 2 of those things at least.
It can't just be fun.
Yeah.
Like that's the difficult thing.
Even though, yeah, you're right. That does sound kind of a sad place to be.
But no, that's the thing. To me, that's how I see my homework. Like it needs to be useful. So nothing of what I do is ever just like fun and light and not have a purpose. And I wish I could do that. I feel like, to me, actually finding that things that I do just for fun, just for personal reason, like Will was saying, that's like is just for me, is really important. And I, at least personally, I forgot about those, especially since I moved from LA to New York. I lost my space of working out, like community thing, and I can't find that in New York. So that has been difficult. I think it's really important to have one thing that you do that's just for you, that has no monetary inside, that has no, learning inside, that's literally just for you and your well-being.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what I found a little bit this year with the music theory and the music stuff. It does improve my sonification work, but I don't really connect it with that directly. I'm doing it more because I'm enjoying doing it. But I really like this question because, if you want to do more of one thing, you have to do less of something else. There is only so much time in the day. So I think this is a very good question that everybody should be asking themselves. What are you going to do less of next year?
Mm-hmm.
It questions too how you do that, and I think people do it differently. Like Duncan is like, do you schedule it during the week? Like people dedicate days to that kind of stuff. I think Duncan, you have a day for the sonification stuff. But I know some people work with years. So like Stefan, I think it's Stefan Segmeister. He always says, I work 5 years and then I take 2 years off or something like that. It's something crazy like that. He literally has like I work for 3 years and then I take 1 full year off where I just do whatever I want. And it's really interesting how you can plan it differently depending on your situation. So curious, Duncan, you do have the day off during the week. I mean, one day for something, right?
So I have, my week is split between the work that I do for the climate charity Possible, which is like 50% time, and then my freelance projects. What I've been trying to do is safeguard like my Tuesday morning to do like personal stuff, but actually it has just ended up being admin morning instead, because that stuff needs to happen.
Pushing out emails and
so what I did instead is I booked out 2 hours on Sunday morning to really focus on it's like my music practice time. And sometimes that's like theory, sometimes it's just sitting in front of my synthesizer and playing with things. Sometimes it's like, I don't know, installing a new script on Norns and it gets quite codey. It's like, but it has to kind of have that relationship with music and practicing. It's like doing not like doing my scales literally, as in like playing scales, because on a synthesizer you have an arpeggiator and it just does it for you. But I don't know, like figuring out ways in which you can safeguard time. Make sure it's agreed with your partners and your co-workers and things like that. But just that you won't be disturbed for just like an hour, 2 hours each week, and then just showing up and putting some time in there, you will get places. That's, I think, what I've learned this year, and it's been really, really good for me.
That's great. All right, so I'm last one less of. So mine is kind of a little bit similar to yours, Duncan, in that I am going to try to I guess it's a little bit different. I'm not that I'm trying to buy less books or whatever, but I'm trying to consume fewer things, like fewer books. Listening this year, I just love listening to podcasts, as you guys know, and I'm like, listen to them on 2x speed every second I can. I'm putting my headphones in, I'm finding another podcast, and I'm reading books and listening to books, and I just feel like I can't stuff any more information in my head. I need to stop, but I'm like addicted to it. So I'm trying to figure out a way to stop.
Do you synthesize that information in any way?
If there's something good that I want to remember, then I write myself a note in, like I send myself an email, and then every once in a while I take those emails and I put them, I do something with them. I either take action on it or I do the thing that I said I was, in there that it gave me an idea. But other than that, I mean, because you can't guarantee a podcast is going to give you any good pieces of information.
Because I mean, you said you wanted to do more with your newsletter this year, and maybe that's a great way of doing that. Like that's kind of how I write my newsletter. Every day I try to write down just one thing, and then after 10 days have gone by, I've got like 7 or 8 things at least, and that's a solid newsletter.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Maybe make it a condition if I'm listening to it. I need to be thinking about a way to, translate it into a newsletter or a.
Yeah, just kind of like, what is my aha thing from this? Maybe there's something there.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Ali's digested podcasts.
It needs to be something like I feel like I need to create some sort of reward mechanism for either doing it or not doing it, or like, like listening to the podcast maybe is my reward for something. So I'm just not like constantly doing it and not giving space for my own thoughts.
Do you use podcasts as a way to like keep you busy while you're doing work, or is it more something you do like you just listen to podcasts and you really focus on the podcast? Or
usually like when I'm doing something else, like I'm doing dishes, I'm doing laundry, I'm going for a walk, I'm driving, stuff like that.
So you're rewarding yourself, because I'm very big on podcasts and Netflix and like, my husband like, you watching like 10 shows per week, and I'm like, but it's my background noise. Like I just put it on, it doesn't matter what it is, not really it, I don't really watch it, and it's my way of convincing myself that I can't work because I'm really watching Netflix, and I'm not. But I'm
You're right, it's definitely a way of rewarding myself, but then I'm wondering if I'm rewarding myself too much and I'm not even giving myself time to think. I'm trying to drown out my own thoughts almost,
I mean, I think having that like reflection time after you listen to something is really, really useful, and just think like, right, what did I get out of this? And just make a couple of notes. And then, once you do that for a few months, you've got tons of stuff. And like writing about it is a great way to help you think about it as well, I think.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, it's a good thought.
Wow, this is great. This is like therapy.
I know. We've learned to be more have more gratitude.
More depth.
Okay, so now let's switch to more of and less of. I keep wanting to say more of and less than, like for math, more than and less than. More of and less of for just the general Dataviz field.
So this is like what we want to see more of happen in Dataviz and what we want to see less of happen in Dataviz.
Yes. Yeah, just as a field in general, like things that you're seeing. I can go first to like get
let's flip the order
flowing. So more of, well, actually let's start. Well, I'm going to say less of, just because of
because you set the rules.
Yeah, because I make the rules. No, I feel more passionate about this one. Less of is I would love to see less scrolly telling, or I guess this is maybe my more. If you do scrolly telling, I would love to see more of some sort of indication, like how long the scrolly telling is going to take, or like a little map, like where you are in the scrolly telling, or a progress bar or something, because I find myself I don't really like scrolly telling. And I found out that's why, is because I don't know where I am in this story. I don't know how much longer it's going to take. When I jump, you click on an article, it's like, okay, is this one I need to sit with for 10 minutes and scroll through and really absorb, or can I just skim it? And I have no idea. So it would greatly improve my scrolly telling experience if I had some sort of concept of how long it's going to take and where I am in the story.
I love that. Can I say I love that? Because I forget, when you build a storytelling, which I just did for the mfnstat.org website, you know how many moments you have. So you're like, there's going to be 5 moments, and you forget that the user may not know, and they're like, oh my god, how long is this going to be? Can I skip to the next section if I'm not interested? I don't have to keep scrolling forever. And when we were implementing, one of the web dev, I believe it was Benedetta, but I'm not sure if I'm accurate, and she said we should have a secondary navigation on the site that says where you are, and you can skip and go back and forth. It was the whole website is storytelling, so it's a little different than the New York Times, who is a separate article, for instance. They have those like mini article. It's a whole website, but like I was like, of course we need a secondary navigation. Like, why not? And but I didn't cross my mind while I was designing. So raising that point of like, it annoys people, it's a problem. Let's just make it systematic is like really great.
Yeah, and it's such an easy fix, just like that tiny little like a scroll, a progress bar at the top or something, just to show me, okay, these 2 scrolls, you're halfway through. Okay, I get it. This is going to be a fast one. So I guess that's my more of and less than, all wrapped into one. See, that was so fast.
That was a lightning round table right there.
Is that all? That's all about storytelling?
Well, yeah, I don't know. I feel like that's my biggest gripe. It's like scrolly telling everywhere. All the IIB awards are scrolly telling. And I love scrolly telling, but I'm just like, I feel so like I'm floating in space every time I click on one. I want to know if it's going to take me 1 minute to read this, where I'm in the story. Yeah, you can see I'm passionate about this.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Duncan, how about you?
Whoa, hold on. Aren't we reversing the order?
Oh, okay. Yeah, going. So, Gabby.
Do I start with less more? I don't know anymore. Is it less?
I did them both at the same time, so you can do whatever.
I want to see less what I call free criticism, which is criticism taken out of context. That's just like somebody randomly bashing some database completely taken out of context. I really hate those. I think it's really problematic. It's a social media issue. It's mainly a Twitter thing. But in general, I find it really strange that people would give their opinion on a design completely unaware of what the brief was, what the user is, like who's the user, who it was created for that database, and all those little things. I just find it weird.
It's been a real problem this year, I feel like.
I think so. Yeah. And I'm all for criticism. Don't get me wrong. I actually think criticism is really important, especially as a community. I just think it's done in a way that's really harmful. And especially when it's like that, when it's kind of like it comes out of nowhere. It's not specific. It just feels like I hate this because of this, but there was a lot of thinking done on database potentially that would answer that question and that criticism. And I don't think they ask themselves this question when they add, random things. So I think we should, as a community, it would be great if it doesn't happen. And if it does, if we call it out, being like, this is not how you give criticism. Especially, I'm afraid that this would scare junior, beginner people who are entering field from posting online and getting actual important feedback. So that's number one. And then number two is I would like, and I think that's true for design, that we have less glorification of personas, like people. I find it really weird that we have this whole thing about like some people I put on a pedestal and we all people, and it shouldn't be about people, but about the work. And I know it's a natural thing, but I found it just, just a little strange, let's say.
100%. I was just thinking in my head about that. You stole my answer. I was just thinking hero worship.
Yeah, it's hard not to do. I mean, you see people really talented, like Gabby. I see people hero worshiping you all the time. Like, she's so talented.
Please don't do that to me. It makes me really uncomfortable.
It's so hard to do. You see someone creating really impactful work, and you're just like, wow, like that. Whatever they have, I want that. I want those skills. I want that way of thinking. And they can't compare themselves to the work, so they compare themselves to the person. Right?
Yeah, and there's something a bit strange, and that's true for design in general and architecture and a lot of other fields, and we talk about it like between us quite a bit. But this idea that sometimes an organization, a person would take the credit for the whole work. And to me, it's even as freelance, sometimes we post something saying, I did this. But the reality is we work with an editor, we work with a web developer, we work with, like another creative director within the organization. And I want to see more credit given to those people that are more maybe invisible because they participate in our process. They are very important to me. My clients' feedback is very important to how my work evolves. And I wish we had a little more extra crediting, understanding that database is rarely, sometimes it's one person doing one database. Most of the time it involves several people at different level. So I wish we would see more of that.
Yeah, you're right. Even the feedback, haven't thought about that, but yeah, you have a team, right? But then you also have the people who gave feedback and they're never getting credited, but a lot of times it's like revolutionary what they said.
Yeah, I mean, a good bit of advice I heard a while back is to if you're going to idolize anything, don't idolize the people, but idolize the piece of work. And then you can identify what you really like about that piece of work, and then you can replicate it in yourself. And then you don't just kind of like go down this thing where it's like, I don't know, oh my God, Gabby's so amazing. And she does, she goes working out on the beach. So I need to go working out on the beach if I'm going to make great data viz. And you draw all these like weird.
Not anymore. She doesn't.
No, I'm just getting fat out here.
Now she goes working out in the alleyways of New York City
in December.
Very grunge.
Yes. Yeah.
It's a good point that you said. I like the idea of loving work and being appreciative of work. That's really important. And also, I think the problem when we do that at adolescents, and we say that one person work is forever good. And I have a really hard time with that because personally, I make terrible database. I made mistake, like big mistake in Dataviz that have been posted online. And I feel like the reason why I get good criticism is people just like my work beforehand. So they expect all the work to be good. And then there's no more this eye that they would have with someone else of actually double checking the data, the work, etc. So yeah,
that's an interesting point. Yeah, I mean, I can also see like you have a certain style and you're consistently putting out work in that style that's really good. So I mean, it's just like, you know,
yeah, it's my business too. Don't hate me too much either. Like, but,
it's so hard. I know it's so hard. It's so hard to separate the person. And I agree with you. The hero worship. I don't feel like that's helpful to anybody. But yeah, it's hard. Will, how about you? You can do more of or less of or both.
There are no rules at this
There
point.
are no rules.
At this point, it's just going to be what I want to see in the field. So, I mean, I think this is really controversial. I don't know if people will like this, but I would like to see like from individuals, like less focus on a particular style. So like maybe this is part of the whole hero worship thing, why it's kind of like faded or like worn off for me, is that I think in the beginning I would see people and like I would say, wow, that's so awesome, this piece of work they just produced. And then they produce another one that like looks very similar because it's in their very particular style. And I think, wow, that's so cool still. Like, look at what they did. But by the time you see like, you know, piece number 14 in that same exact style, and it looks very, very similar, even though it's like an amazing piece of work. Oh, are you having trouble hearing me? Better? Somewhat better? No? Okay.
No, I just
maybe it's just me.
Okay. Yeah. So anyways, you know, like once you see like, it gets a little samey after a while. And I think it, you know, it's not like a discredit to the designer, because I know that like these people are great designers and they're still producing amazing work. But my personal taste is for a little bit more variety. And so I would like to see in general people like branching out a little bit and like exploring new styles. It doesn't mean you have to do something totally different every time, but you know, evolving, I think, your style maybe a little more rapidly than people normally would.
Yeah, I agree. I don't want to tell people what to do with their style, but
Yeah.
for personally other people's style, I would love to see when somebody evolves and
Yes.
adds, you know, they have this really strong style and they add this to it, and then now it's kind of going in this direction. Like you see that it's related to their work, but it's, you know, it's evolving. Is the right word.
That's how you grow as an artist,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
There will
difficult,
always be people who liked your first album best, but you know,
Yeah.
for you as an artist, you do need to progress.
I think
Yeah.
that's what's difficult though, because we do depend on the money. And I'm saying that knowing that I want to push my style always. I think you'll always notice when it's me, but I hope there's an evolution happening. But I think it's difficult because sometimes the support you get from the community or the money you get directly from client who wants this specific style, it's hard to like try something new when the client is like, I'm hiring you to do this exact same thing that you did 3 years ago. You know, and it's like difficult to fight when you're like, I want to try something else, and they're like, no, just do whatever happened before. Like that's fine.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, but my community has seen the same thing for 100 times, but you know, this other community hasn't seen it at all, so they keep asking for it.
Yeah, and this comes without any judgment. Like I am as guilty of this as anybody else. You know, how many scrolly telling pieces have I done or whatever? And so, which to Ali's idea, I've contributed to the pile of scrolly telling pieces. But you know, so I'm as guilty of this as anybody else, I think.
We're just talking as fans. As fans, this is what we would like to see.
Yes, as fans, this is what I would like to see. And I think we had an interesting conversation in our Slack the other day where Sonia had posted something about, you know, seeing a lot of illustration heavy pieces recently, and a lot of them kind of converging on a particular style that looks very similar. And this is in news design. There's a lot of like, you know, visual storytelling that uses a particular illustration style. And some of the like commenting on how she felt like it was overused, or, you know, it was all just kind of feeling samey. And so, yeah, that's what I would like to see more of, more diversity and less sameness. And I think in the same regard, just because I work in news, I will get on my hobby horse and say, I would like to see less concentration of work among certain outlets. So, you know, it's just economic fact that like the New York Times has, you know, like 18 times as much money as every other news organization out there. And so they produce so much work. And, you know, same thing, like certain places, you know, Reuters and Bloomberg and whatever, and WAPO, like they all have these very big data viz teams. But I think that is part of what contributes to the sameness, because it all creates a little bit of an insular feel, and like everyone kind of mimics their style or mimics each other's styles. And so everything sort of like pushes as one mass when you have all this, like, you know, 90% of the visual storytelling and news is concentrated among like 3 or 4 organizations. And so I would like to see greater diversity and more appreciation of other outlets. You know, there's really amazing stuff being created at news outlets all over the world, not just in New York and Washington and London. And so I would like to see more appreciation of that stuff.
And outside of news outlet, that's pretty.
Yes, outside of news outlet as well.
Yeah, it's hard to push people to do new things and like not copy the big, because I mean it's hard to think of a new idea. Right?
Yes, it is.
They're also pretty good,
Yeah.
to be fair. They're also very good.
Yeah.
They're amazing.
Quality. It's just there's very good things that don't look like that also exist outside of that little sphere.
Yes, exactly. You know, and people do, like, I think there has become more appreciation of it, especially like thanks to some people that are that have become like bigger voices in the community and are definitely promoting these things nowadays. So, you know, I think we're starting to see more appreciation of that, these smaller outlets, but I want to see like even more. Like it's not enough yet. Not fast enough.
Pushing.
Yeah.
Your whole thing is like more evolution.
More evolution, more
new.
Change, more new. Yeah,
which is different from your personal one, right?
Yeah, I know, that's true. My personal one is like less new. So
that's funny. All right, Duncan, are we on you?
I think so.
Close us out.
Yeah, it was interesting to me that Will was like, "Oh, I think this is going to be controversial," and then said something which I don't think is controversial at all. Like, I feel like that.
Well, I thought it was controversial because a lot of advice you get in the field is like, come up with a really distinct style and then like sell your style. You know, like you need to have a personal style that's identifiable. And I think I also
in on it.
Yeah, I also controversial because like I didn't want it to come off like criticizing people that, you know, have a very characteristic style. Like that's not inherently a bad thing. So
yeah, like Gabby said, especially if you want to make money. You're trying to make a living.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I've got 2 things which I think are actually going to be more controversial. So let's see how this goes. So the first one is I would like to see more things happening on the internet. And this is kind of a wild thing to say, but it definitely kind of feels a bit to me like the data viz world has kind of gone straight back to the pre-pandemic situation of having big events in big cities and not much else going on elsewhere on the internet. I mean, Outlier is still around, and I think that is fantastic. That is an online-only event. But like IO is back, and it seems like, you know, nothing has changed. I know that IO is now gone as well, but, you know, it happened this year. We had the IIB Awards, which were primarily in person. I think there was a stream. I don't know how much. I mean, it wasn't particularly accessible around the world because it was in like US evening time. So most of the rest of the world was asleep. So it's just kind of like, this is a huge bummer for folks like me. And, you know, this is very much a personal gripe, but I think it's not limited to just me, who don't live in like big data viz cities and aren't willing to fly halfway across the world to get to one, you know, for whatever reason, for the disruption to your life, for the carbon emissions and the environmental impact of flying. Like there's all kinds of reasons why it makes so much more sense just to do online events. You know, obviously there are things that you can get from in-person events that you can't get from online events. But I think when you kind of compare the pros and cons, to me, it kind of feels like the pros are so much bigger on the online events side of things.
So you're saying more online events.
Yeah.
Because at first when you said that, I was thinking local meetups, having people doing more local meetups.
I mean, local meetups, like, I don't have a problem with that at all. I think that's quite nice. Though, there are, of course, accessibility issues around those as well. There are only local meetups in places that have more than 50 odd people doing data visualization in them.
That's true.
Because, maybe only 5 of those 50 people will want to go to a meetup. So you need to have a real, like, how many cities around the world have got 50 people in them doing data viz? Not that many, probably.
No.
And it is, I agree, it's definitely an issue. And we talked recently to somebody from the community who was like, if I move, am I going to lose networking opportunities if I move out of New York? And I haven't built my career at a place where there's no database, which is LA, almost no database. I actually thrive on online stuff because I could get access to, as you said, things that were everywhere, but also things that were from diverse places. So European, but also in Asia if I wanted to. Of course, the time difference is complicated to handle sometimes, but you do have more access to things in general. Access just become more public and more accessible. And I agree that the big community events, when they happen in person, it prevents everybody from, most people from accessing it, and that's an issue. Maybe not for super local meetups, but although I have participated to 3 meetups, one in Paris and one in Portugal online, and that was great because I would have never done that otherwise. So maybe local meetups can be online.
It just feels like we've dropped everything that we learned over the last few years of the pandemic, and I would love to see us, take some of those learnings and continue to build on them, continue to develop. We've all got quite good at doing online events at this point. Let's use that. Yeah,
I will give a plus shout out for pandemic lessons we've forgotten to remote work. I think I've, looking at people that are seeking jobs, there's been a big shift back towards office jobs, and the remote jobs are starting to dry up, I feel like, and there's no reason for that. We've learned that all these places function very well with remote people. So stop forcing people to come to the office.
I think we can also resist it, to be fair. I have a thing, it sucks that it's on us employee, but I think we need to resist the random rules of you have to come to the office needs to be negotiated. It sucks that it's like that, but I think we need to push back because again, we get into activism here, but this is so important for me too, of what the heck, I'm in the office, still in the pandemic, by the way, it is not over. So I would love for us to push back as employees.
For any employers out there, just FYI, what I've seen a ton of is you can be hybrid. So you need to come into the office 2 days a week, but you can be remote the other 3 days. That's completely useless. So that's not helpful for anyone, because the reason that remote work is great is because it makes your job accessible to people that live in, East Kirksville, Tennessee, and they cannot move to DC because their life situation does not allow that. So if someone still needs to live in your city to work at your place, that's not a helpful, accessible remote role. And you're losing out on huge pools of talent because you're limiting yourself to people that can live in very unaffordable places to live.
Yep. Yeah, it's, I think it's probably no coincidence that these cities that do have more than 50 people doing data viz in them are some of the most expensive places to live, right? So yeah, I think that's a real problem. I would love to see more distribution of that data viz talent around the world.
Yeah, I take your point, Duncan, but as an introvert,
told you it was controversial.
It's not. I want to play devil's advocate a little bit because I'm an introvert, so I'm not saying I crave this, but there are legitimately people who are I'm in the data viz field and I really want to meet up with people in person, and I want to have an event and I want to, see people face to face and shake hands. And I don't crave that, but I feel like could be a middle ground, have more virtual events, make sure you do lots of virtual events, but I don't think we need to be forget.
I don't think that's what Duncan is saying, though. He's can we have more online, but still in person?
Yeah,
I'm not saying let's put a ban on ever being within 5 meters of another human being ever again.
But people have limited time, and if it's okay, IIB or whatever is going to decide to be virtual or in person, or, I mean, they did do both. I don't know, but does it not work if someone does both? Like, is that not good?
When you've got limited time, it is so much easier to go to an online thing and just like dial in and then go back to whatever you were doing 3 minutes after it finishes than to fly halfway across the world or even just commute across town, you know?
Yeah.
I think there's a difference. Go ahead, Will. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I agree somewhat with Ali. Like, I will play devil's advocate and say, I totally understand on paper all of the advantages of remote conferences and things. My personal experience and feeling is that I get almost nothing out of them. And even conferences I found very exciting. If they were only virtual, I didn't attend, and I would just watch the talks that I was interested in on YouTube afterwards.
So here's a question for you, Will. Can I just answer Will specifically here? How much are you putting into those conferences compared to how much you put into an in-person conference?
Oh yeah, nothing. But that's the reason that the in-person conference, because it forces me to like be there and interact with people and see people.
Sitting there, and
yeah, because I mean, I've attended online conferences where I have put a lot in. You know, there's been a Slack, and I've made an effort to post things in the Slack around the online conference, and I've messaged speakers afterwards. Not have to wait for 10 minutes while a scrum of people goes to them. I just send them a Slack DM. It's much easier, and then they can get to it whenever they want to. And then I've built relationships off that that thing. So I think. Like this is what frustrates me a little bit when people are like, oh, you can't socialize at online conferences. It's like you can, but most people don't because they don't know how. And I think that there is definitely an art to it.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah,
it's also sometimes easier for introvert. Like personally, I found it way easier to DM somebody than to approach somebody in a conference. But I think to Will's point though, maybe there's a tension to happen between, is this the community networking opportunity where potentially it's in person because it's easier, or maybe there's like several different versions, versus the conference that are here to teach you something, more like lecture and speakers, because those ones, you don't need to network. Like we can have, I think that's the problem. We're still having those in person, but like, as you just said, well, you're like, I just want to watch the live if I want to, if I'm interested, and then bounce. But people go to conference for the networking thing. So let's just skip the lecture altogether. And just have community events, like local community events and also online community events. So
I really like that. Detaching the two bits of the conference experience away from each other. I think that's really valuable.
Because even when I'm at an in-person conference, like the talks, I'm like, they're great, they're wonderful, but like that's not why I'm here. The
best part is the like salon thing where you're like having drinks with, of course.
The talks are just like an icebreaker, so that like you have something to talk about when you go up to a new person, and you have an easy first question of like, oh, what did you think of that talk? And that's basically the only point of talks, in my opinion. Like if I want to learn a new technique, I will just Google how to do it. I'm not going to like sit in an auditorium and
Sorry, conference speakers, you're just the warm-up act.
But it's just interesting. Like Adobe Max kept like most of it live online free for just the section. They still charge a massive amount of money because they know the people who pay wants the networking opportunities, but they know they really don't care about lectures. So that's all free online still today. And you can still watch them 2 months later. And that's because they understood that you can separate those almost as like different services and offers. So I would love to see more lecture stuff online only, and then network stuff where maybe there's also two things happening where you have in-person possibility and potentially there's like new ways of networking online that are made just for that. Because I think when you come in a conference online, sometimes you're like, well, I'm here to watch and not to network. People make that like you will. They're like, they don't engage with it. So maybe you have dedicated event just for networking online too. And then
I like that.
I like that. Cool.
Did we cover everything you wanted to, Duncan?
Yeah, I think so. I did have another thing, but we definitely don't have time to discuss it. So I'll save it for another day.
Your first thing was so discussable. We all had so many opinions on it.
Well, you can look forward to discussing the other one subsequently. We'll leave that as a little teaser to end on.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for joining, and catch us next time on the Elevate Dataviz Show. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.